Hello and welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So we're up to Eventide now. It's a small set, as you can see, 180 cards, 60 commons, 40 uncommons and 50 rares. If you look at the set symbol here, this suggests, I suppose, an eclipsed sun. A lot of the themes and settings were already established in Shadowmoor, and we're seeing a continuation of that. When we get to the hybrid spells, you'll notice that they are enemy coloured as opposed to Shadowmoor's allied colours, and also you'll see those mega cycles in this set because they were over the two set mini block here. Now, something that I should have really done when I did Shadowmoor, but you know, it's the video is done now, and I noticed this as I was trying to slice and dice through from a tribal perspective. What I might have been better off doing with Shadowmoor is actually slicing it through by sort of caring about colours, because that's one thing that's really strong in this mini block, Shadowmoor and Eventide. So for the Eventide set I'm going to do that, and we'll see how things look through that lens for this particular set. They also introduced a creature type of Noggle in here, and we'll look out for that. You'll notice that with Shadowmoor, which we looked at last week, there was a sort of eerie look to the artwork and the flavour, and you know, if you're familiar with the storyline and you maybe looked at some of the links, again I'll include links in the description to the MTG wiki article. But yeah, within Eventide, that sort of eerie transformation deepens. And so what we should also do is look out for certain creature types which sort of tie in with that, like those macabre areas of folklore. So I'm going to just scroll through the set as a whole here, because there's only 180 cards. There's our set symbol. And you can see, again, we've got elementals cropping up, and hopefully when I come to think about Friday's episode, which is a sort of artwork stroke non-MTG episode, sort of, you know, occasionally, I don't always do Magic the Gathering videos, but again, for Friday's episode, I think it is definitely going to be card artwork, because it is such an interesting block, or the two mini blocks together to look at from an artwork perspective. So again, I'm going to go through my binders, see what I can find in paper and get up and close, but I'll stick again with part of that as being a look at the elemental artwork. You can see a lot of the artwork, particularly the Kithkin artwork, has a bit of a darker look to it. We're seeing spirits in here, we're seeing merfolk, so we're seeing both from a tribal aspect, both you know, a species and classes as well. So we've got like fairy wizards, merfolk wizards. There's another elemental. Spirits, pretty dark artwork as well. And you'll see in terms of themes and mechanics as we scroll through this. So I mentioned hybrid mana and the fact that it was enemy colours, and you'll see that in a moment once we scroll down far enough. Also, untapping still a thing, and -1/-1 counters. In terms of the keywords abilities, and you'll notice some of these cropping up, we've got Chroma, we've got Retrace, and we have Persist and Wither. And Persist and Wither you'll be familiar with already through the previous set. Here's our spirit avatars, and we'll be looking at that particular cycle. Looks like we've still got some shapeshifters as well. Unmake is in the set. And there's quite a few. I think there's a few of these creatures with modal activatable modal abilities on them, like Stillmoon Cavalier. And this is what I was talking about. The lieges are in here, and so you get various buffing based on the colour of the creatures. Here's the Noggles. Looks like the mimics were all shapeshifters, although again they're not changelings. And now we move on to more of those hybrid spells. Another mimic there, another liege. Gildabane's in the set. Beast, Horrors. There's another shapeshifter. Another elemental. Oh, and our old friend Scarecrows. And then the non-basic lands. Not quite so much as the previous sets, I don't think. And we'll look at those as well. So, yeah. Not as much to talk about as a large set. And I've adjusted accordingly as well in the way I slice and dice through types of spells. So not quite so granular with that. Right, so hybrid mana. So 85 cards of the set have hybrid mana in the casting cost. And that's enemy colours. And you'll see a number of these obviously will feature once we start talking about the mega cycles. Yeah, lots of interesting non-cycle spells as well. So, 4 cards which specifically have this untapped symbol on them. So we'll try and keep an eye out to see if any of the mechanics in the set, the themes of mechanics, synergize in any way with this. I think that was a little bit more of a thing in the previous set. But we'll see. We'll see if there's any creatures that somehow have something that happens when they're tapped or untapped. But it looks like these are self-targeting. That's interesting. Untap for each counter on target permanent, put another of those counters. Okay, so that interacts nicely with -1/-1s. Right. Speaking of -1/-1s, 18 cards which specifically reference -1/-1, and you'll notice that some of these do that outside of also this wither effect, which also is to do with -1/-1 counters. And we'll look specifically at the cards that reference wither in a moment. So these are cards that just, in the rules text, not necessarily the reminder text, but in the rules text, talk about -1/-1 counters. I'm trying to remember, I think OF does a full, but I could be wrong. No, it isn't. It'll come to me in a moment. What is it, FO? Yeah, FO. So FO means full oracle, including the reminder text. So you can see the difference. Here I get all the reminder text, because of course there's some persist stuff in here as well. When I do these episodes, I tend to focus specifically on what's been introduced here. But this one, there was a sufficient amount of persist and wither, that passed over the previous set to actually also talk about that. So you can see the difference between stuff that just references -1/-1 in the rules, but not in the reminder text. And by doing FO, we get, what was it, 38 cards. So you're getting both here, both. They have it in the rules text, and if it's there in the reminder text. So those were the general themes and mechanics. Before we get on to the keywords and abilities like persist, wither, retrace, chroma, and chroma, persist, retrace, and wither. I did say them all. I'm going to go through Wooburg, just so we can see, because I did want to just show you this, how so many of these creatures have or spells, but it looks like it's mainly creatures that synergize in some way with particular colours. So we've got 13 there which mention white. Again, this is purely in the rules. I'm not including reminders here. Not that I necessarily think there was anything in the reminders. So 12 with some sort of reference to blue. And as we scroll through, you can see, several of those are cycles. And then black. There were 12. Red, there were 16. And you can see as well, this is where we'll talk about chroma in a moment. So it looks like we've got stuff going on with chroma. So 12 green cards. Oh, sorry, not green cards, but 12 cards that reference green somewhere in their rules text. And these are creatures again. And these could either be conducive to the colour, positive in some way, or they could be hating on it, depending on what the effect is. So there we have the green ones, which we, yeah, 12 of those. So I wanted to just highlight again elementals, because that's been such a strong theme generally in here. And you can see there's quite a number of elementals again. Both ones which are just solely elementals and ones that have some sort of subclass or other tribal class. Subtype. It's pretty cool artwork. It'd be interesting to see how many of these I actually have in in paper as well. It's always interesting to see. Looks pretty nasty. There's our Noggles. So 4 Noggles, blue, red. Got 3 Noggle rogues and a Noggle wizard. And I did want to just highlight the shapeshifters, because that's a thing in the set, although earlier we'd had, and the block as a whole, the 2 blocks, we've had changelings. These, as I said, these weren't changeling shapeshifters. And we'll see, you can see there's, yeah, quite possibly a cycle in here. Okay, scarecrows again, another tribe that we saw in the previous set. 6 scarecrows. They're all artifacts, but as you may have seen as we went through the different references to colours in the rules text, there's bound to be a cycle in here of those. So chroma. What do we want to know about chroma? So what chroma does is it's associated with an ability that will count mana symbols of certain colours. So although what the effect you do may be quite different, the effect is dependent on the number of a particular colour of mana symbol in the mana cost of something. And you can see here most of them. So here this one cares about creatures you control getting +1/+1 for each white mana symbol in its mana cost. This one here, when Springjack Shepherd comes into play, put a 0/1 white goat creature token into play for each white mana symbol in the mana cost of permanents you control. Goats were a little bit of a thing in this, in the mega block as a whole, in the 2 mini blocks. You may notice several cards here and there over the blocks as a whole that reference goats in some way. But you can see how quite different these are, but the common denominator is they're all looking in some capacity to particular colour mana symbols somewhere. Well, basically in the casting cost, but might be selective on either permanents or creatures, or to do with your cards in your hand. So looking at cards, or looking at certain types of cards, or cards in a certain zone. Here's Persist, which we're probably already familiar with. So when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had -1/-1 counter on it, return it to play under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So if it had none, it comes back with -1/-1 counters on it. If it does already have -1/-1 counters on it, then it doesn't come back. So it would be handy to have stuff that does shenanigans with -1/-1 counters. And there are 11 of those. Just how many? There were 9 chroma cards if you're keeping count. 11 Persist. 12 with Retrace. So with Retrace, you may play this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. And that's the same in all instances. Now you'll notice it only applies to basically instants or sorceries. So non-permanents. 12 of those. And then Wither, 13 of these. Deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. But as you saw earlier, a number of these may have additional -1/-1 stuff going on. So this one has both Wither and Persist. This one, you can actually play around with -1/-1 counters on it, in addition to its Wither. There's another one there. So 13 of those. Right, cycles. There was a cycle of Skulkins. So these were scarecrows, and they grant other creatures of a certain colour a boon until end of turn. So this one, white creatures gain Persist. This one, black creatures gain Wither. This one, which is this gives green creatures +1/+1. This one, red creatures gain haste, and the shell Skulkin is blue. Creatures gain shroud until end of turn. Or target blue, a target, and it's always a target creature. Not all creatures, but a target creature. They can't obviously target themselves because they're colourless artifacts. And the other thing, you notice this, because it's not being tapped here, you can invest as much spare mana as you've got to do multiple targets. Cycle of chroma spells. They're just rare spells with chroma. Cycle of those, one in each colour. Pretty variable on the casting costs. Like the Primal Crux is like heavily invested in green. Enemy colour hybrid ability creatures. So they're uncommon, and they're mono-coloured, but they have an activated ability with a hybrid mana cost. And there's a cycle of those. And again, casting costs and activations all over the map. Cycle of common retrace spells. Pretty straightforward. Again, good amount of variability in the casting cost there. And obviously, accordingly, you're going to see differences in their effects. So this one, you've got tokens. This one is card draw. This one is discard. This one is damage. And this one is +4/+4. But again, because of the retrace, you may play this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other cost. And you can keep doing that, like as it goes back into the graveyard. There's no requirement as part of a retrace to exile the card, like you do see in some recurring spells. There's actually a cycle of untappers, so they're common. And they have, whenever you cast a spell of this creature's colour, untap this creature. So the untap is sort of shrink wrapped into or part of this creature. It's not like a separate activated ability. It just happens whenever you play a spell of the certain colour. So now we have some more cycles, but these are all hybrid mana cycles. So we've got cycle of hatchlings. They're uncommon 6/6 elemental creatures which have a cost of 3 and then hybrid. They come into play with 4 -1/-1 counters on them, and whenever you cast a spell that matches one of its colours, you remove 1 counter from it. And whenever you cast a spell that matches both of its colours, you move 2 counters. Just the way they're sort of stacked up. You can see they might have other abilities on them. This one's got Wither. This one has Lifelink. This one you can give it Shroud, and this one you can have a thing where target creature can't block Shrewd Hatchling, so it makes it unblockable. In fact, they all have, yeah, so that one has First Strike and that one has Wither. So they all have something in addition to that, other other triggered ability. And again, I pointed out at the start of the episode, the hybrid mana is enemy colours. Cycle of hedge mages, one of which is a Noggle. Notice the creature types as well. So this is new. This, I'm not sure how many hags there are in the set. We've got dwarves, and then we do have Merfolk Wizards, which we've seen quite a few Merfolk in the block as a whole, in the 2 blocks. So with these, they're 2/2 creatures. They're uncommon. They have a cost of 2 and then hybrid mana, and they represent a new race native to Shadowmoor. So they may have been in the previous mini block, but in terms of Shadowmoor, these are new to this particular set, but not new to Magic in general. Magic generally has a come into play ability that's triggered if you control 2 or more lands of a certain type. If you control 2 or more lands of 2 different types, because of the way these sort of stack, its ability is stronger. They're similar to the witches from Shadowmoor in that they can be played in a monocoloured deck because it's hybrid mana, but they reward you for playing multicolour. There's our mimics, which sort of bounced out to us a little bit as we were going through other things. So they're 2/1 shapeshifter creatures with a cost of 1 and then hybrid. They become more powerful when you cast a spell that matches both of its colours. They're similar to the duos in Shadowmoor in that they can be played again in a monocolour deck, but they reward you for playing multicolours. As we've seen, there's lots of really interesting interacting triggered stuff that goes on in this, in terms of colours. Okay, so now onto the mega cycles. So these are all the enemy coloured cycles, which are a continuation of the cycles we've seen in Shadowmoor. So we get the enemy colour lieges. They have a mana cost of N and then 3 hybrid. Each liege has 2 separate abilities that provide a +1/+1 bonus to a creature that matches either colour, and they stack. Each has an ability or effect appropriate to its colour. You can see here there's sort of 2 parts to this. There's a +1/+1 and then there's that other ability. They're horrors here. It's the creature type. Another mega cycle of demigods. So enemy hybrid mana, converted mana cost of 5, made up entirely of hybrid mana. They're all at rare, and they're all spirit avatars. The auras, the enemy auras, they grant +1/+1 and one of 2 bonuses if it matches one of its colours, or +2/+2, and both bonuses if it matches both. And they do that in a number of different ways. In actual fact, this one's slightly more than that. This is +1/+2, so when they stack, you get +3/+3. But you can see that doesn't have the additional ability. It purely has this buffing. Whereas the other ones have +1/+1 and then something else in addition to buffing, power and toughness. Common hybrid 1-drops, so 1 single hybrid mana at common. And of course it's interesting how these hybrid creatures interact with these auras. And you can see how in a deck, you know, if you've got these, particularly the really low casting cost auras and very low casting cost hybrid creatures, you can get some interesting things going on there between the low cost creatures and the low cost auras. It make a very fast, aggressive deck. Hybrid filter lands. It can be tapped for colourless mana, and they also have this ability on them which filters mana of a certain colour. So there's one for each of the enemy colours, and then they filter it into various colour combinations. So they're both filtering it and improving it, doubling it up in all the different combinations you could have. I think these are reprinted in Masters 25. So all hybrid mana 3-drops, they're uncommon. Converted mana cost of 3. Like I said, made up entirely of hybrid mana. They've all got some sort of ability on them. Either static, ETB, or activated in some way. And we've seen a few modal spells in this set. And we have a cycle here, in this block, or 2 blocks. And we got more here, so uncommon hybrid spells, different effects depending on which of the 2 colours we use to play it. So the modality is triggered off how this was cast from a colour of mana point of view, which is interesting, and we've seen that already. And it just reminds you about, you know, you can do both if you use both colours. There's the land as a whole. So in addition to those filter lands, we have Springjack Pasture. So you tap it, add 1 to your mana pool, 4 tap, put a 0/1 white goat creature token into play, tap it, sacrifice X goats, add X mana of any one colour to your mana pool, you gain X life. So a bit of goat shenanigans on there, albeit fairly highly costed. And you've probably seen there's quite a few notable cards. Bloom Tender, Figure of Destiny, which we saw earlier. And that's the one that sort of grows, and that became Figure of Destiny. If I can find it for you, because this is quite an important card in the development of Magic. There you go. So this, I suppose you could argue, became Level Up or was an inspiration. Excuse me. Gildebarn we saw, Glen, Alendra, Archmage, Helix Pinnacles in here, which is an alternate win condition. I don't always highlight those up actually. Nettle Sentinel, Heritage Druid, Sanity Grinding, Stigma Lasher, Stillman Cavalier we saw as well. Just going to see if I can find Helix Pinnacle for you. It's mono green, single green. Let me just see if here you go. Shroud X, put X tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, so it's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game. I often forget about these alternative win conditions when I'm doing these set rundowns, these set musings. So, oops, there we go. So we were here with goats. Just two legendaries, Ashling the Extinguisher and Sapling of Colfinor. One's mono black, the other one's black green hybrid. So look out for these in the episode, in the Commander Durdle episode. Back to our creatures. So I'm just looking at this artwork again. Really scary artwork. This is cool. You can see as well in a small set, how many of those cards were hybrid mana. What do we do? There's 85 hybrid mana out of a total card count of 108 cards. So not quite half of them, but it's a lot. Okay, auras. Oh, sorry, not auras, straight enchantments. So these are, and there's our alternate win condition. And there's Fable of Wolfenau. Whenever you play a green spell, you may put a 2/2 wolf creature token into play. Whenever you play a blue spell, you may put a 1/1. So again, this set as a whole had some very interesting enchantments that got triggered in some way as stuff happens. So again, it's worth spending a bit of time going through the two mini blocks. And seeing what comes up. Look at that artwork. I do hope I've got a copy of this. I don't know if I have. Yeah, I don't remember necessarily opening one of those. But we'll see. It's amazing what I can find. So yeah, 9 straight enchantments. Then we've got 6 auras, of which 5 of these are part of a cycle. So the non-cycle one is Recumbent Bliss. One regular artifact, which is Ward of Bones. Each opponent controls more creatures than you can't cast creature spells. The same is true for artifacts and enchantments. Interesting card. Each opponent controls more lands than you can't play lands. Okay. I didn't really know about that card, or if I did, I'd forgotten about it. One piece of equipment, which is Leering Emblem. Whenever you play a spell, equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, equipped for 2. And as you probably guessed, there's a number of artifact creatures in here, 7 in total, of which 5 form part of a cycle. The ones that aren't the cycle, ones we haven't seen already, which is going to be Altar Golem. So again, you can see there's some tie-in here to other things that you might be doing. So power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you play in play. The number of creatures in play in total, actually. Interesting card. 7 to cast. But it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Tap 5 untap creatures you control, untap Altar Golem. So again, there's like tappy going on here. And you know, how can you abuse that? And then Scarecrow, which again isn't part of the cycle of 5 creatures, 5 Scarecrows. So 3 to cast, 1 sacrifice Scarecrow, draw a card, 4 tap, return target artifact creature card from your graveyard to play. "19 instants." I haven't sliced and diced these like I do sometimes, so I'm going to scroll through them and just again highlight up in the different colours what sort of things we're seeing at instant speed. So we've got damage prevention, bounce of non-land permanent, counter spell, the controller gets to draw a card. This is this sort of changing of text that you sometimes see in blue. So retrace, single card draw, which obviously you can abuse. Direct damage in red. Obviously dependent on permanence in some way. There's our 3 damage. Red spell, red instant. It's got wither on it. Damage prevention. So interesting what you see in the enemy coloured instance as well. So here's our removal spell, unmake. Here's our graveyard hate. Persist. Switch of power and toughness. Some modal spells. Yeah, this is loss of abilities. Some conditional damage here as well. So it's interesting what you get when they combine up the colours. Double strike. So sorcery speeds, 21 cards, tokens, bounce to the bottom of the library, return, bounce back to hand in blue. It's interesting, white and blue there. Library manipulation. Interesting. Got library hate. Search target place. So that's interesting way of dealing with combo. Discard. Destruction of non-green creatures. And life drain. There's some like life exchange going on. Sorcery speed. Hand manipulation. Hand discard. There's our single red sorcery direct damage. It does have retrace on it. There's our 4 damage one. There's our red gain control until end of turn spell. Pump. Life gain. Tokens. Graveyard. Recursion. Tokens, life gain, and land destruction. Another token one. Untap and copy. Yeah, tokens that are a copy. So yeah, again, a lot going on here. As I said, as a whole. I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a self-contained set. Obviously, being a small set, it's reasonably. It's a what's the word? It complements the large set, but there's a lot going on here. It's very. There's a lot of flexibility in this, which is interesting. I wonder how it would be to draft in isolation just on its own. I think I've only ever drafted it in combination with Shadow Maw, so I wouldn't know. Right, expensive cards. So, $31 for a Bloom Tender. 22 for Waves of Aggression. Be interesting to see how many of these have been reprinted. The filter lands were reprinted in Masters 25 and in Double Masters. Also, this one was a Zendikar Expedition. Water Bones, there we go. $14. Be interesting to see where that comes up in the grand scheme of things when we're looking at EDH Rec, actually. Grenada Archmage, $11.45. So we're fairly quickly getting down to that $10 threshold. Here's our alternative win condition one, just above $10. And then we get to Necro Skitter, where we sort of cross that threshold. So a lot of these have not been reprinted, or if they have, it looks like they're cropping up in the Masters sets generally. Yeah, there's another filter land. I'm just seeing where the filter lands are. Yeah, so we're floating around $9 for those. These lieges as well. For some reason I thought $9 is pretty expensive, but for some reason I thought the price had come up even more on these. And then EDH Rec. So yeah, Bloom Tender, all of the filter lands, the complete cycle. Grenada Archmage. So this is the one which has, it's a flying 2/2 for 3 and a blue. Single blue sacrifice it, counter target non-creature spell. It also has persist on it. Regal Force. That's the first of our lieges. So the green blue one. Helix Pinnacle. Interesting one to try and abuse here. So was it proliferate? Does that? More lieges. There's our Slippery Boggle. And that gets interesting when you start sort of suiting it up with various auras that you know, can abuse the hybrid mana in some way. Okay, so that's the set musings bit over with. What to look forward to. But before we do that, we'll have a quick look at the theme decks, see what came through in terms of what they were promoting via the theme deck. So we got a Battle Blitz, which is a red-white theme deck with a mechanical focus on untap. So of course this would have leveraged cards from earlier on. I'm trying to find one that's actually from Shadowmoor. That's the other thing. Oh, there we go, there's one. I was just thinking actually, because this is, so many of these cards care about and revolve around enemy colours, I wonder how many of Shadowmoor cards would be. It would only probably be the mono-coloured stuff. So we've got Red White, Balefly Liege and Hate Flayer. Death March, Black Green, -1/-1 theme. Creekwood Liege and Doomgape, Life Drain, White Black theme deck, focus on life gain, so I can pretty much guess that, you know, what sort of things we're going to have in here. It says Archon of Justice and Divinity of Pride. It's a blue-red theme deck. Yeah, it looks like you can suddenly switch power and toughness. Dominus of Fealty and Mind Rack Liege. It's also got that Cloud of the Dominus, so yeah, looks like there's lots of, yeah, blue-red hybrid here. So it's, you know, a blue-red theme where they're leveraging various buffs and other things that happen as a result of you playing blue and red. Superabundance is green-blue. Creature tokens. We've got Fable of Wolf and Owl and Spitting Image. Okay, just looking about how that could be abused. Yeah, so again, we got five decks here for each of the enemy colours. And then in Wednesday's episode, yeah, I managed to get a card pool with Ashling in it. So I'm going to have to go through and just take out all the non-black cards. I'll probably do that before I start the episode, actually, just to speed things up a little bit. But I will go through what I removed very quickly, and then from the black cards, obviously, what I'm going to remove there. I did actually. It was one I was curious about, so I don't always do this, but I just wanted to see where I might get dragged down what particular rabbit hole. You can see here actually I added some additional swamps preemptively, so for the particular artwork, so they weren't actually part of the original pool. Yep, 180 cards there. So, but I did. So Whenever actioning the extinguisher deals combat damage to a player, choose target creature. That player controls, he or she sacrifices that creature. So there's a number of themes you can... It's not... I think there's only 44 decks in the EDH Rec database. So I was curious when it gets that low as to what the average deck was like. So I'll talk a little bit about this in the episode, and maybe I can compare it with the build that's the non, because Architect has two algorithms in it. It has the EDH Rec one, which is the one I don't use, and it has its own one. But I thought it'd be interesting to compare and contrast with what the so-called average deck in EDH Rec looks like versus the one that we get when we use the bin-built algorithm, the Architect algorithm. So we'll see. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will see you in the next episode.